Good morning and welcome to Tuesday, fellow inhabitants of the planet Earth. It is I, the OGGM, your guide to all the tabletop role-playing game news, weather, and general nonsense. It's the 28th day of June, 2022. It's about 62 degrees and partially sunny here at Site B on a small island off the coast of Costa Rica, or in the West Coast, depending upon where you actually think I live. And it's time to take a look at what's going on in the world of role-playing, if there's any new controversies or nonsense that we need to address that we didn't address yesterday. And thankfully, there isn't really anything. We do have an article we're going to look at, but let's preface it's a little bit word. Yes, I know, it's hard to believe I have a degree in theater and communication, and yet I still sound like this. But let's face it, I'm old and my brain is tuna. All right, so the ongoing OSR versus 5e versus 5e war. You know, if you shill for 5e like I do, then the OSR attack you. If you shill for the OSR like I do, then the 5e attack you. If you don't specifically target 5e the way you are supposed to, then even the 5e attacks you. And then we have this small group of self-destructive 5e players who, when you actually listen to them and address them, you realize that they don't know what they're talking about, and they have yet to actually present any evidence to their argument. And when they can't present evidence to their argument, they just fall back on the same thing. Well, D&D sells more. So therefore, 5th edition is the ultimate accumulation of gaming. It's what Gygax wanted. It's the best game. It sells the most. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let's just address this. Yes, Dungeons & Dragons is technically the first role-playing game that was published. We do know that there was actually role-playing games that existed before D&D, and that Gygax basically Thomas Edison'd those, and he and Dave did their thing, and then Gygax did his thing, and then Gygax did his thing, and then Dave did his thing, and then they sort of fell apart, and Gygax did his thing, and then Gygax made a mistake and fell apart, and Gygax went off on his own way, and D&D became what it is today, thanks to Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro. Yay, Hasbro! Now, I can't truly ever 100% be against 5e or whatever it is Wizards of the Coast is doing, because I'm a stockholder. I own 10 shares of Hasbro stock. So as long as 5e keeps selling, I keep making money off of my stock. So, yeah, that's why I'm a shill for Wizards of the Coast. Doesn't mean I agree with the philosophy that Wizards of the Coast tends to follow. No, but it also shows me, as somebody who is unbiased, that philosophy is changing. And when you're addressing the 5e battle and the 5e idiots like, Garrity and these other people, and then you look at the actual numbers, you realize these guys aren't 5e fans. If you look at what actual 5e players are saying, and I can prove this because I've been playing in a 5e game for the past 2 months, and I've run and played 5e, and I've spoken to at least 20 5e players in the past year about what they actually think about 5e. And they don't agree with these hardcore people who are still sitting on their teeny little stump. Most 5e players agree with the OSR. They're like, you know what? I want to see more. You know what? I appreciate what Gygax did with AD&D. And now, thankfully, as of, we have 5e players who are either directly or indirectly saying, yes, you need to play AD&D, you need to buy AD&D, you need to read AD&D, you need to read the old stuff, you need to understand that this is just part of the evolution. And I really wonder what these people like J. Scott Garrity and these other people are going to do in a year. Because we know 5e is going to end and there's going to be something new for 2024. It might be very subtle. It could be just 5.1, like 3.5. It could be 5.5, or it could be a 6th edition. It doesn't matter. It is very clear that for the 50th edition, Wizards of the Coast is going to change D&D again. Again, it could be a very subtle change, or it could be a very drastic change, but there will be a change. If you have any belief otherwise, you just have to look at the progression of product post Tasha, the stuff that Jeremy Crawford has said, the stuff Chris Perkins has said, and you really need to pay more attention to Perkins than Crawford, because Crawford backpedals, and Crawford has even said he's backpedaled. And as the latest thing Crawford said was basically, do whatever the fuck you want. We're changing D&D. Whatever you want to do in your game is fine. Okay? D&D is going to change. 5th edition changed post Tasha. And 5th edition is going to change again. So these people who are hanging on to this very little precipice about, D&D's number one, therefore it's what you have to play, and if you don't play, you're a horrible person. That precipice is getting smaller. And what are you going to do when 5e changes in 2024? That leads us into our article. See, I'm going somewhere. So I found an article. It was pointed out to me, and then somebody else pointed out to me, and then a third person. And Shadzar is going to say, you didn't comment on this article, OGGM. So I got to comment on it. This article is about a year old. It's from a guy called Alphastream. I don't know who he is. He occasionally does some stuff for 5e. It's interesting, though, that if you go to his channel, the main stuff he talks about, even though he's talking about 5e, is older stuff. Like, if you go to Alphastream's About Me, favorite setting, Dark Sun and Greyhawk, both AD&D and older settings. If you look to the stuff he's made, he's written a thing called Ashes of Athits, which is based upon Dark Sun. But then he's got this article where he's saying why no RPG company truly competes with Wizards of the Coast. So, 1, is D&D successful? D&D is successful in the United States. It is the number one selling game for role-playing in the United States. There's no question about that. Is it as successful as it was in 2020 and 2021? No, the numbers have diminished. Why? We're going outside. And why? People are tired of 5e. They want to see other games. And people go, well, Stranger Things. Except in Stranger Things, they're playing AD&D. And then people go, well, Critical Role. But in Critical Role, they're not playing 5th edition. They're playing Matt Mercer's D20 fantasy game. Okay? It may say 5th edition, but based upon all the home rules that he has done, I do not think what Mercer is running is 5th edition D&D. He is running Matt Mercer D20 fantasy. Okay? So, and then the guy puts up numbers, but these are numbers that are a year old. Of course, the articles are a year old, but the numbers he put up were Q1 numbers. And if you look at the percentages, it says 53.7% D&D. 53.7. In 2020, it was 80. Then it dropped to 55. Then it went back up. Then it was 53. As of Q1 2022, it was around 55%, which means it's still holding the market lead. But, compared to the other games, 22, 32, 33, 4, 5, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41. 42% of the United States is playing other games. So if you got 100 people, 53 of them are playing 5e D&D in some form. 42 of them are playing other games. And of those other games, you know what's at number 1? Pathfinder and Call of Cthulhu and other games that aren't 5e. So the numbers have gotten smaller. So is there competition for D&D? Yes, there has always been competition. There will always be competition. D&D needs competition. It can't exist without competition because it's slowly losing its foothold. And actually, honestly, if you look at the way advertising and the human brain works, the more you try and pound an idea into someone's head, the more they will resist and the more they will look at other things. So every time these people like this Alphastream guy say 5e, 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 sooner or later, the 5e player's brain is going to start to rebel on some subtle thing because you're telling me what I already know. And the more you tell me that, the more I'm going to go, no, wait, I'm resisting this. It's like when your mother tells you not to do something, instinctively on some level, you're going to do something else. So the best way, I've said this before, the best way 5e commenters can do what they want to do is to not talk about 5e that much. And you shouldn't even mention the OSR or the competition. Why no company truly competes with Wizards of the Coast tells my brain, oh, there's companies out there competing with Wizards of the Coast? I want to know who they are. Don't say that. Don't say shit like this. It's like it's the OSR. The more the OSR bags on 5e, the more attention they give to 5e. The more 5e players bag on other games, the more attention you're giving other games. Saying shit like this is just going to attract attention to other games. Oh, nobody competes with 5e? Well, I don't know if I believe that. I'm going to look into it. Hey, there's this game called Starfinder. What is that? I want to find out what this Starfinder shit is. Oh my god, this is a good game. Oh, what? There's Call of Cthulhu? I've always wanted to play a horror Lovecraft game. What? There's a space game? You know what? I want to play this space game. So, has Wizards of the D&D broken the law of diminishing returns? Which means, do they make more money than they spend? And the answer is, oh, sort of. Remember, the core books, Player's Handbook, DM's Guide, the starter sets, don't make any money for Wizards of the Coast. Okay? They break even. It's the same for, like, PlayStation. If you work at a brick and mortar or an online store and you sell a PlayStation, you make no money off of that. You break even. You make what you spent to carry the product. When Wizards of the Coast sells the Player's Handbook for 5e or the new box set Stormwick Island, they're going to make back what they spent. They're going to break even. There is no profit in the core because it costs as much to make the PlayStation as it does that they're going to get back when they sell it. And then the sales start happening, like, the books are on sale right now. That's actually money that Hasbro is losing. There's no money on that. The law of diminishing returns applies only to the supplements. You don't make any money off of a PlayStation, but you make all the money off of selling the games, selling the controls, selling the peripherals. That's why if you ever go into an electronics store and you're looking at PlayStation stuff, they're going to ask you if you want a control, if you want to see the newest game, if you want to see the newest upgrade, if you want to buy the insurance, if you want to buy the special box. Because the peripherals, the games, all the extensions, that's pure profit. The same with Dungeons and Dragons. Tasha's pure profit. Adventures like Storm King's Thunder, pure profit. Which means that they break the law of diminishing returns because they make more than they spent. It's the same thing for electronics. Then we move on to, what about 4E and Pathfinder? Well, Pathfinder kicked D&D to the curb. From the day 4E came out to the day 5E was announced, 4th edition was the worst decision Wizards of the Coast ever made. They lost money, they lost fans, they lost support of the gaming community, and worst of all, they lost money. 4th E cost them more than they made because of all the bad press. Pathfinder, on the other hand, was the number one game for a couple years. Just like GURPS was, okay? Your precipice, 5e, is very small because it only takes one little thing to chase them away. Your fan base is fickle. Now, then we talk about 5e success going into, from 2014 to 2018, 5e was okay. It was breaking even, and the controversy surrounding it was very low. It's only when Critical Role started up that 5e success started building. And that 5e success is not based on 5e. It's based on the word of mouth from Critical Role. And then that started the whole ugliness, controversy, ism stuff. I mean, it was there before. It was there in 4e. I mean, the 4e wars were brutal. I mean, literally, I've told the story before. Literally, people were physically assaulting each other over 4e versus other games. That was ugly. Every possible, I don't know how many times I could talk about this, every possible mistake Wizards of the Coast could make, they made with 4e. And then when they realized 4e was not making them any money, they abandoned 4e. And then we had like a year or two when Wizards of the Coast was just making board games and sort of hinting at 5e. 4e was a disaster. So yes, here is a period of time where every other game kicked Wizards of the Coast's ass. It opened the door for the OGL. It truly allowed the OSR to prosper. And it basically said, well, here's a small percentage of people in the United States that are still playing D&D, but the rest of the world is actually finally being acknowledging, and our eyes are being open, and there are other games out there that are doing just as well or better than 5e. And despite that control of the 55% profit and fan base, that fan base is fickle, and they're starting to look at other games. And your success is based upon Critical Role. COVID hits, your success spiked up to 88% because people were trapped at home. They were getting bombarded with 5e stuff because of Critical Role and because of just this whole cult of celebrity personality. So that shot up to 80% because of the curiosity and people being trapped at home. Then it went down because people were losing interest. And they were like, there are other games. And you know what? I'm tired of this shiny, happy, beautiful young actor telling me how great 5e is. And yet, you know, where's the actual proof you've played it in your entire life? And, you know, I mean, here you are playing it online, but I'm just seeing an online show about D&D. When I play D&D, it's not the same. So the percentages went down because the expectations cannot be met. And right now we're looking at 53%. I mean, that's a huge drop in profit for Hasbro. Now, regarding the D&D brand in the United States, that's huge. And that's where most of the popularity, the lack of competition exists. We can compare Dungeons & Dragons to McDonald's. Everybody knows what McDonald's is, even if they've never eaten there. Everybody has at least heard of D&D, even in passing, even if they've never played it, right? Its branding is out there, and its branding is brilliant. I mean, they've made a few mistakes, but really, you know, if you want to talk about branding and reach, all you got to do is go to a playground. Go to any playground anywhere in the world. Watch a bunch of kids, because that's, you know, 80% of all branding is based upon and targeted to kids. And kids making their mom buy them things. So go to any playground in the world and watch the kids. How many of them are wearing Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, Power Rangers stuff? How many of them do you see playing superheroes? You know, acting out. I'm Batman, you know, driving around. Now go to those same playground and show me one kid who is playing I'm D&D. I'm a D&D character. You won't. You can't. There's no kids out there at a playground who are at dramatic play pretending to be Steve the magic user. But there's thousands out there pretending to be Spider-Man. So if you want to talk about D&D's reach, I'm sorry, Marvel and DC kick your ass. But D&D has branded pretty good. They haven't branded great because, again, despite the sales, their target audience is very small. And that's pretty much the end of this guy's argument. So this guy's argument is there's nobody that can compete with Wizards of the Coast. And the answer to that is yes. Wizards of the Coast has competition. Wizards of the Coast needs competition. The competition is chipping away at Wizards of the Coast's stranglehold on the market. The percentages have gone down. The numbers have gone down. D&D was down to 53% this time last year. Now, I haven't seen the numbers for this year's quarter yet. I don't know why they haven't been posted. But I'm going to speculate that, as of the last time we checked, Pathfinder had jumped up to number 2. Call of Cthulhu was still down there, around number 3 to number 5. So I don't know what the numbers are right now, but it just shows, again, that if 53 people out of 100 are playing D&D, that's 42 people that are playing other games. And if you look at those other games, you're going to find a lot of them are either Pathfinder, Call of Cthulhu, World of Darkness, these, independent games. Independent games are getting huge, guys, because independent games, these small niche things, as much as I bag on them, are addressing what the gaming public thinks they want right now. And even Wizards of the Coast is acknowledging that with the changes they're making to the product line. And again, I wonder what these people are like this Ashen Alphastream guy are going to do in 2024 when 5e changes. And it's going to change, okay? And what are you going to do when Matt Mercer and Critical Role release their own role-playing game? And it's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's only going to take one thing to knock D&D off that precipice. In the past, I said it would be Powered by the Apocalypse. Powered by the Apocalypse only needed to do one little thing to knock D&D. Sadly, it hasn't done that yet, but with the Avatar game coming out, it might. Now we're looking at Free League and Modifius. Most anticipated role-playing game of 2022, Blade Runner. The awards are coming up. We've already had 2 rounds of awards. Wizards of the Coast, not even nominated. Not a single Wizards of the Coast product nominated. Plus, we had the Nebula Awards. Thirsty Swords Lesbians got nominated for a Nebula Award. Not a single Wizards of the Coast product was even considered. So if the world science fiction and fantasy community says this game is more worthy of the highest award we can give it than anything Wizards of the Coast has put out in the past 4 years, that's huge. So suck it. Suck it long and suck it hard. And finally, when people post up, well, actually I have 2 finallys because I've talked about this too much. Finally, number 1, you're only looking at the United States. D&D is number 1. In the United States. Hasbro is number 1 for selling a product line in the United States. What you refuse to acknowledge when you look at those numbers about Hasbro's money is that money is Magic the Gathering money. It's not D&D money. If you just look at D&D money, it's not that great. That $8 billion Hasbro Wizards of the Coast made for Hasbro last year or whatever it was, 90% of that was Magic the Gathering. The rest was D&D. If Hasbro let Dungeons and Dragons go, they could still live off the branding perfectly fine for 5 to 8 years. If some other company took Dungeons and Dragons, they could not give it the support that Hasbro did, and Dungeons and Dragons would just sort of twiddle down to the best branded. Okay? But Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast would be perfectly fine. If Hasbro let Magic the Gathering ever go, that would be a huge disaster. Because that's the number 1 source of income in the United States from Wizards that Hasbro takes. Magic the Gathering. And again, this is only the United States. It's number 1 in the United States. If you look at the rest of the world, and there's more people in the rest of the world than there is in the United States. If you took everybody in the United States and put them in one spot, it might fill, North Dakota. If you put all the D&D players in the United States and put them in one spot, it might fill half of North Dakota. If you put the rest of the population of gamers out there in the rest of the world, because remember, Asia It's a huge chunk of the population of the world. And you know what they're playing in the rest of the world? You know what the number 1, number 2, number 3 games are? It's not D&D. There are countries where nobody plays D&D. Okay? It's Call of Cthulhu. It's other stuff. Call of Cthulhu is the hugest selling game in Asia. Asia! What's that? 60% of the population of the planet? So these numbers are only based upon America. And these accusations about what 5e is, it's McDonald's. It's saying the same thing like McDonald's. It's the most recognized. Everybody knows what it is. Yeah, everybody knows what McDonald's is. It doesn't mean everybody eats there. Or it doesn't mean that everybody's playing it. Wizards of the Coast hold on that number 1 lack of competition spot is smaller than you think. There is a huge amount of competition pecking at Wizards of the Coast door, just waiting to crash that ceiling. The paradigm will shift. It's just a matter of when. And then D&D will be at the same spot it was during GURPS and during Pathfinder. We'll still know it's there. It's never going away. But it's going to just kind of just be, there's stuff, other things I'd rather do. And the other, finally, is, okay, you published this article in 2021 where you're like, hey, I need to fly the 5e flag because I want to hitch my wagon to that comet before the 5e flag fails me. Because 2024 is coming up. So whenever I see somebody jump on the 5e is number 1 bandwagon now, at this point in time, in the last year or so, all I got to say to them is, you're too late, dude. You're too late, okay? Where were you in 2017? Where were you in 2018? Where were you in 2019? Okay, 2020. That was when you needed to jump on the I'm going to support 5e bandwagon. I mean, as much as I dislike the guy, at least Scott Garrity has been relatively consistent in his constant misinformation about 5e. He hitched his bandwagon to 5e years ago, 2, 3, 4 years ago, and then he's rarely ever gone off the rails. He did for a little bit during the whole beginnings of the Ukraine war. Then that spiraled into further. I'm not going to give Scott Garrity any more attention than I already have. But at least he was consistent. And the other ones that have been hitching their tails to the 5e comet since 2018, at least they've been consistent. If you're jumping on the 5e comet now, in late 2021, early 2022, I respect your attempt, but you're too late. You're too late. I mean, even I've been talking about 5e for, since 2016. So in closing, this article was brought to my attention from Alphastream. The link's down below. I don't like bagging on 5e because I've got 10 shares of Hasbro stock, so it's sort of, hypocritical of me. But I try to remain unbiased, and I try to have an open mind. And when I see articles like this, I'm like, yeah, okay, you're sort of right, but you need to look at every aspect of what happened and what's going to happen, and you need to accept that the competition exists. It is there. It is strong. It's getting stronger. And the more stupid things Hasbro Wizards of the Coast says that people are going to consider istisms, the more that competition is going to be knocking on that back door. Now, I don't know what's going to happen when Blade Runner comes out. I don't know what's going to happen in 2023. I do know there's going to be a change in 2024. Whatever it is 5e now will be different after 2024. That is 100% guaranteed. It may be a small, subtle change, and they will call it 5.5, or they'll just drop what they should do is drop the, edition thing. Is to stop calling it 5th edition and just call it Dungeons and Dragons. They probably won't, but that's what they should do. Wizards of the Coast presents Dungeons and Dragons 2024. That's what they should do. And it's going to change. We know that. They've said that. Perkins has said that. And I'm more willing to listen to Perkins than I am Crawford. What are you going to do, Alphastream, when it does? What are you going to do, all the other 5e people out there who refuse to change and base their whole thing on insulting the other players and flying that Wizards of the Coast flag? What are you going to do when 5e changes in 2 years? Anyways, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people out there that disagree with me. The link to this article is down below. If you appreciate what I have to say, let me know. If you don't appreciate what I have to say, let me know. If you have facts that I don't have, let me know. There you go, Shadzar. I commented on it, even though it's a year late. But, it's one of those things where if I didn't, he'd say, hey, where were you, buddy? Link down below. Support me, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. I've talked about this for 31 minutes. I think that's more than enough. Talk to you soon. See ya.